Bona tarda.
Good afternoon. We have organized a conference today with the very suggestive title of Breaking the Cycle of Violence in Palestine, to speak about Palestine, which is, I think, what we all have in our hearts at the moment, also in our minds. But I think it hurts our hearts right now. This is what is most hurting our hearts. Since it's not all good news, although there could be some that I can give you, 151 member states voted for a ceasefire today in the United Nations Assembly. They want to put an end to this genocide. Some other people call it in different ways. The City Council of Barcelona, fortunately, today just voted in favor of a ceasefire for the conflict of Palestine. Therefore, we are taking small steps forward, which, even if this is just a symbolic political witnessing, they are important, because this shows that it's not all disasters in this world. We find ourselves in a violent cycle which is destroying everything we had achieved in peace culture in the last years. Conflicts were resolved through other means other than armed force. However, there is a hegemony of the global north with a leader, the United States, which doesn't want to lose its leadership, and they are ready to continue walking this path of armed warfare, representing this global capitalism. We have the Ukraine war. 400,000 have died so far, but nobody speaks about that anymore. More than 18,000 dead in Palestine so far, more than a third children. In the occupied West Gaza, we don't know exactly how many dead, but they are saying more than 300. And just in this conflict, only in this conflict, more than 1,500 Palestinians have been imprisoned, on top of the 5,000 imprisoned in Israeli jails. This violence cycle should be stopped by all means, and this is why we are organizing this event. The International Peace Bureau, a centenary international organization, received the Nobel Prize in 2005, I think, and they are organizing this event. They have an office in Barcelona, and Centre de l'As, our Catalan organization, is managing the office in Barcelona. Chloe Blackwater is in the Barcelona office and representing International Peace Bureau, the International Peace Bureau. We also have Sean Connor, director of the International Peace Bureau in Berlin, and David Llista, who is the director of Global Justice in the City Council of Barcelona. Thanks to David sustaining this office, thanks to this office, we can organize an event like this one. That's all. Thank you all for coming.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for an important but also difficult conversation. My name is Sean Connor. I'm the director of the International Peace Bureau headquarters office in Berlin. For those that are not familiar with the IPB and our work, we are an international network of peace and peace-related organizations with members in over 100 countries. And we use our network to coordinate and exchange ideas, to learn from one another. And I think our event today is a wonderful example of our opportunity as a global network to bring together voices for peace from a region that is currently experiencing terrible, terrible conflict, humanitarian crisis, war, and so much more. And so our job is on one hand to listen to the voices of peace activists on the ground, to better understand, to learn, and I hope we'll all take the opportunity today to learn from the excellent panel of speakers we have here, even when we don't necessarily agree with perhaps everything that's being said, or when some things challenge some of our perspectives that we hold. It's important to have these conversations because at the end of the day, peace can only be created by the parties that are experiencing the war. While others can help to facilitate that peace process, it needs to be a reconciliation between the parties on the ground, and it needs to be based in a peaceful approach and a nonviolent and justice-based approach. There needs to be justice to prevent conflict from breaking out again in the future. So we're very happy to have this amazing panel, but again are very aware that this is an emotional subject, a difficult subject for many people, and it's one where our speakers on the stage have experienced horrible traumas on a daily basis in many cases. And so I hope we can learn from this, but also come out with some perspectives on how together as an international movement we can encourage peaceful and just resolutions in Israel and Palestine and the Middle Eastern region, and of course wider perspectives as well. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Centro de las and International Peace Bureau for organizing this event. The first thing I need to tell you is that different neighborhoods of Barcelona and the City Council of Barcelona itself are going through anguishing times. We feel so much anxiety in our hearts, and among other reasons, because we had a direct relationship with the Gaza City Council. For the last 25 years, Barcelona has been exchanging and cooperating with our colleagues from the city of Gaza City Council, as we do with other cities, but very especially with Gaza. We used to share urban issues, the difficulty of obtaining drinking water, since the water circuits were blocked by Israel. We shared our ways of filtering water with them in our Mediterranean contexts and many other policies. Barcelona started joining the demand to forcing a peace agreement, but this hasn't been the case. It has been all the opposite. About a year ago, our mayor and our former government broke all diplomatic relationships with Israel, and they suspended the agreement with Tel Aviv. Our new mayor suspended that suspension and started having a relationship with Israel. But then the plenary session of the City Council decided to cancel all relationships with Israel again after this last attack. And as Pere was saying, there's a nuance added here. The European Commission demanded a Spanish state arms embargo, not just a ceasefire, but they are asking the Spanish state an embargo on weapons, so that the weaponry industry, the arms industry, which is one of the main complicit activities with war, should stop. All projects, of the two military industrial complexes in Spain, sales and purchases of arms from and to Spain. We're going to speak and bring this demand to Madrid now, which is where the final decision must be taken. However, this relationship with Gaza makes our anguish quite acute. You know, there's a park in Barcelona called La Pau, and there was a park in Gaza that was destroyed by the Israeli army. With the support of Barcelona, that park was rebuilt, but it has been destroyed once again by these bombardings, together with the housing around the area. Hopefully, Barcelona City Council can help them rebuild it again. But every life that is taken, every building that falls down, it hurts our hearts very much. When the director of cooperation of the City Council of Gaza wrote us a letter saying goodbye to this beloved land, Mohammed al-Shakra, we saw that we needed to explain this in order to break with this kind of film of the good and the bad, this Western Israel narrative, because it's generating demons and saviors. And we know this is not true. We know this is fake, so we try to recover these interpersonal relationships and relationships between cities, and we will continue to do so. So I want to thank your organizations for helping us build a model based on a living together, which is a peaceful one, together with Centre de las and IPB. We were thinking that since after some peace conferences or peace conversations were organized in Barcelona, maybe a summit of Jewish, Muslim could be organized for a nonviolent solution. This we will study. We will study this option. It's still complicated, but maybe as a capital city of the Mediterranean, we could try and organize a summit of these characteristics. It's in our minds to do so. Well, thank you very much to you, and would like to give the floor to our speakers, to our guests today, which I would like, whom I would like to invite to come up to the stage.
Para hablar. Bueno, buena tarde. Buena tarde.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, excuse me. We're going to start now this dialogue of Voice for Peace. Please excuse me. Suddenly, my voice is taken, and also my other problem is my Catalan is not so good. Anyway, excuse me. I'd like to remind you that simultaneous interpreting devices allow you to follow this conference in Spanish on Channel 1 and in English on Channel 2. I would like to welcome our speakers today, our speakers this afternoon, this evening, who are here also online. We have another speaker, and we are waiting for yet another one who was delayed because of his flight, but he will be joining us in the next few minutes. So thank you for being here. I just wanted to say that the aim of this conference is to be able to speak about peace in an extremely complicated context. As we were saying before, this is quite an emotional situation where sensitivities are quite high, emotions are running high, but this discussion has the value of being able to bring together voices from different parts of the conflicts, also with experts that may be able to give us a bit of perspective. And being able to hear voices speaking about peace in such a difficult context, I think has a great, great value that I would like to highlight and stand out. This conference is going to take place on the basis of respect and listening. The speakers will share some of their personal experiences. We are lucky to be able to count with two women who live there. They are living in the area of conflict, so they can tell us their perspective firsthand. I would like to highlight how brave they are to be here with us, for them to be with us today. Thank you very much for this. I would like to present our speakers for today. Amani Aruri is a Palestinian activist for human rights. She works for youth, women and girls in Palestine and in the Middle East and Northern Africa regions. Amani has over 10 years experience in the promotion of gender justice, human rights, and peace and security agendas, working with organizations of civil society, collectives and networks, public and private foundations, and UN agencies. She has managed innovating programs serving marginalized groups, especially women and young people, as well as designed and implemented programs for strengthening of capacity building for youth. She's currently a member of the Council for International Peace Bureau and other organizations of the civil society. Thank you for being here, Amani. To my left, Teresa Aranguren, a journalist specialized in the Middle East. Her professional career is closely linked to international information in conflict zones. She was in Beirut during the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982, and she covered the wars of the Gulf, the Balkans, the NATO bombardings on Yugoslavia, and above all, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Her professional task has been awarded with different prizes and awards, and she's published two books about the Arab world and the Palestinian people. Palestine, the Thread of Memory, and Broken Olive Tree, Scenes of Occupation. Also, Sharon Dolev is with us today online. She wanted to join this panel this evening. In the end, she had to stay behind at home. However, we are deeply thankful for her presence. She's an Israeli activist for peace and human rights. She's the founder and executive director of the Middle East Treaty Organization, an organization dedicated to promoting disarmament and non-proliferation of nuclear and arms and massive destruction weapons in the Middle East. Sharon is also a founding of the Israeli movement of disarmament, working to involve Israel in international and regional processes for peace and disarmament. Sharon also has close links with women in black. Welcome, Sharon, to you too. Thank you for your effort too. We are waiting for a fourth speaker who works with Sharon, actually, Emad Kiai. As I said, His flight was delayed, but he must be about to come through the door. Actually, I am being told that he's coming in right now. So we're going to wait for him just a minute so we can present him when he can come up to stage with us.
Y bueno, pues mientras esperamos,
While we wait for him, I wanted to say that we are going to have a discussion, a dialogue among us. I would like to ask you some questions to you. I would like to pose some questions where you will each have about 5 minutes to answer to each question. And in this way, we hope we will be able to promote dialogue. And we hope that also the speakers can talk to each other and exchange comments. We will have an order in their intervention, so this is the format for tonight.
Chloe, nice to meet you. So I was just going to introduce yourself. So you arrived just in a good time. Okay, so Emad Kiai es experto.
Is an expert in political risks, diplomacy, and disarmament. He's a director of the Middle East Treaty Organization, an organization seeking to eradicate all massive destruction weapons in the Middle East through innovating policies of defense and educational programs. He was an executive director of the American Iranian Council, an organization focusing on the relationship between the United States and Iran. He is a co-author of Weapons of Mass Destruction, a new approach to non-proliferation. So I think we're ready to start with our first question. If you agree, the order to answer this first question will be firstly addressing my first questions to Amani, then to Emma, and then Teresa, and finally Sharon. Okay? We know that the apparent trigger of the escalating violence happening in the Gaza Strip was the Hamas attack on the 7th of October. But what is the context that we need to know in order to understand what happened that day and the days after that? What should we know from the past in order to understand the present and in order to prepare peace for the future?
Allow me to firstly thank everyone here in this room. It means a lot to me as a Palestinian and to all of the Palestinian people who really count on me to meet you and to deliver our sincere thanks and appreciation to your solidarity, to your support. The Barcelona City Council's position is not new, and we have been following closely this position. We really understand that the Spanish government, Spanish people, Spanish municipalities, especially in Barcelona, have a unique position towards the just cause and of Palestinians, and the outspoken solidarity and support and the courageous position is unfortunately not something that has been witnessed by so many countries and so many cities. So it is really appreciated, and I want you all to know that all Palestinians are aware of what you guys are taking on your responsibility, of what you have been doing for Gazan people, for Palestinian people in general, throughout different agencies, throughout the government, the political relationships, and people-to-people relationships, the historical relationship. Thank you for all of the organizers, the IPB. Of course, I would like to emphasize on the importance of this platform. For me, as a Palestinian young woman, it was the first time in my life that I joined a platform that has an Israeli peace maker or peace promoter. So this is for me a success, and it broke a big barrier I've had for different reasons. I understand like being skeptical about joining such platforms due to social pressure, due to public pressure, of course, but I came to a realization that we as Palestinians, we need to be everywhere in all platforms. If we don't have seats at the table, we bring our seats with us and we speak up for our rights and we speak up for the truth and the reality we are living. I really appreciate Shannon's presence here. It's also not easy, I understand, but as being part of the peace and justice mobilization movement, it is such a challenging responsibility, and I understand how difficult it is with all of what's going on with genocide, massacres, and wars targeting civilians. First of all, Amani, Aruri, thank you for the introduction. I just wanted to add to your introduction that I'm a Youth Peace and Security Ambassador for Karama Network. It's Middle East and North Africa civil society networks, mainly of feminist organizations serving in 13 countries, but also going out with our MENA region's issues globally, representing them in global platforms, especially the UN platforms, highlighting the intersectionalities of age, ethnicity, identities, and gender. Going back to your question, Chloe, of course, the same narrative that we have been hearing from, especially from the Israeli supporters and from the Israeli government, that the attack on 7th of October triggered the war, which is definitely, for anyone who at least has been following up the news and reading objectively about the situation in Palestine, is not true. This is the 6th war on Gaza since 2008. The 6th war on Gaza. In all, let's talk about the previous wars. All previous wars were not triggered by any of similar attacks. And if we talk about like a real attack, it is disproportionate. And for everyone who is knowledgeable about the international law, it is disproportionate. It is targeting mainly civilians, civilian structure, hospitals, schools, children. And thank you so much for presenting the important figures and numbers, which are not numbers. We need to understand and to remember that these are not numbers. Every child has a story. Every child should have had his future, her future. Every woman dreamt of having peaceful life with her sons and daughters, with her family. You can imagine how many dreams have been killed. You can imagine how many homes, not houses, homes have been destroyed. You can see on the news, which does not represent 1% of the suffering, the human suffering that we missed because of this war. The human aspect, the human side. War is not about weapon and killing and counting how many deaths. It's about the human suffering. It's the only thing we can relate to each other as coming from all nationalities, from all backgrounds. Imagine a woman burying 6 of her kids, leaving nothing for her to keep her alive. Okay. The unilateral withdrawal of the Israeli forces from Gaza in 2006 was done in parallel with a complete siege on Gaza, preventing the access and the transfer of humanitarian and life essential goods and commodities to and from Gaza. Not to mention the transfer of patients, cancer patients, let's focus on this, from Gaza to West Bank or to other regions where they can have treatment. I came back from Gaza a few days before the beginning of the war, and I've seen this on Erez checkpoint, where a 6-year-old girl was literally dying and was grabbed, forced to be grabbed from her father's arms because he could not accompany his daughter. She was sent alone to be treated from cancer. This is just one case. Hamas attack on the Israeli military bases around Gaza was done purely for a political reason. And everyone should have asked this question: why have they done this attack? Of course, Hamas have done this attack to be able to arrest Israeli prisoners in order for them to do the prisoner swap, which is the only possible way to do the prisoner swap. Looking at the Israeli jails with the Palestinian prisoners, the situation that these prisoners are going through is tragic. These Palestinian prisoners are going through torture. They are experiencing torture. They are prevented drinkable water. They are being prevented to have access to food, electricity. They cannot use toilet. They do not have hot water for bath. They can only have 5 minutes to be exposed to the sun. At least 4 prisoners have died since October 7th, totally because of lack of medical treatment, because of negligence, and this is still going on. More than 3,800 Palestinians were arrested since October 7th. Hundreds of them are missing with no information about their destiny, and many of them, they were tortured in front of their families. So this attack on October 7th, it left a door because it happened as unexpected. So the Hamas guys, they wanted to arrest soldiers. It went beyond what planned. More Palestinians, civilian Palestinians, they managed to break the barriers, break the walls and the fences. They got into these cities, and of course, what do you expect from people who have been in open-air prison for 20 years? But only just to add one point, for the October 7th, the Israelis, they used this propaganda, the false propaganda about what happened on October 7th. Of course, any Palestinian would denounce and would condemn targeting civilians. I myself condemn any targeting of civilians, but no one has the right to ask me, for example, do you condemn, the classic question, do you condemn Hamas for the October 7th? Let's go back before October 7th and let's check the evidences of October 7th. The Israeli army itself bombed its own civilians, bombed its own population, and it referred this act to the Hamas military, and they even destroyed the destruction that was left. It shows that this was Hamas. And even the propaganda about rape and sexual assault, there was no single evidence. They said we could not provide any evidence because we were busy with identification of the victims. So this is, of course, it's accompanied with what's going on in the West Bank. Okay, in the West Bank, do we have a terrorist group in the West Bank? It's the PA. It's liaised with the occupation authorities. We have the security coordination. More than 300 Palestinians were killed. More than 5,000 Palestinians are still in jails. We fear to move out of our homes because of settlers' attacks. Settlers were giving guns to shoot any Palestinian who might pose a threat. And of course, all Palestinians are suspicious to settlers. They are burning people in the street. They are targeting children on their way to school. We have schools shut down since October 7th because families would not sacrifice their kids to send them to be killed by settlers. I'm so sorry, there's there's so many to cover, and you can take from my second question's time. Thank you.
Don't worry. Thank you. Emma, do you want to react?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And again, echoing what has been said, thank you to IPB and the City of Barcelona for this opportunity. I received the questions, and this is from question 1, what I can distill. What was the context on October 7th? What happened? What happens next after October 7th in response to the attack of Hamas in the in Israel? And what are the historical understandings that we need to have to better have a bigger picture or a complete picture of what happened on October 7th? And many of them has been aired already. The historical injustices and the occupation and the open-air prison of Gaza, and the fact that when you visit Gaza, if you are for a moment, let's go there, not on October 7th onwards, but before, and you will see an overly populated, densely populated area that is extremely small. Israel itself is already small, the size of New Jersey. I don't know the comparison in Spain, but it's small. And imagine within that, there's a little strip called Gaza Strip. When you enter into Gaza, you may be fooled by the beautiful, pristine beaches, because it's just by the Mediterranean, densely populated and high rises. But if you look a little bit closer, you will see the level of hopelessness that this occupation has created. And that hopelessness is the context through which we have to see what happened in October 7th. Hopelessness and conflict combined provides us very narrow options if you are living in that reality. And therefore, some, in this case Hamas and other military wing, and you can call them terrorists, freedom fighters, whatever you want to label it, resort to violence to resolve their conflict with Israel. Conflict itself doesn't have to be resolved through violence. Conflict we have between us as friends or relationships, and it can then go on from micro level to a macro level between states, between peoples, between groups, ethnicities, sectarian issues, and religious, and. But how we resolve it, the tool sets we have in our bag, when we are confronted in the case of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, which is not from yesterday, and if we zoom it into Gaza that has been under siege, then the product, the generational product, the Palestinians that are being raised in this space, in this environment of hopelessness and anger and frustration, and looking on the other side of the fence, literally, with green hills and these kibbutzim that are really beautiful places, actually. And it is a reality that is so raw in their face. I am not at all, not even an essence of me is supportive of what Hamas did on October 7th. We may have our differences. The resorting to violence begets violence. When you go and you do the carnage that Hamas and others that are affiliated with it did in the kibbutzim, which, by the way, killed innocent civilians, who many of them, because of the nature of the kibbutzim these communities, were actually very much pro-Palestinian. Many of those that were taken hostage had devoted their lives to peace, to engaging with some form of humanitarian or otherwise their part in what they can to bring an end to this insanity, to this carnage that was slow-paced and now is being rained on Gaza. So here, I would like to end by saying that when we boil it down, the human cost When I cut my skin, it's red. Wallahi, it doesn't say this is an Iranian blood or a Palestinian blood or a Jewish blood or Israeli blood. It's blood. And so any life lost is another family that is mourning, is another dream that is not realized. And therefore, with that nucleus at its base being violence, unfortunately creates blindness for the rest of the communities, may that be in Israel or in Palestine, that see again that the only way that they can confront the other is through violence. And as we go throughout the event tonight, we will get to a more hopeful place. I'm starting with this now, but I want you to have one little inch within you to hold on to, because in a time of this force, this level of hopelessness, there is hope. There is a way out. There are solutions. And I will back it up with precedents. I will back it up with what we are doing. I will back it up with the opportunities that are in front of us. And I will ask for your help, along with others, on how we can actually change the trajectory, the current trajectory, as you see through your TV screens and social media, is death, violence, bigotry, and that we have to confront openly and strongly and counter it with a completely different narrative and understanding of where we can go. I'll stop there to build on in later questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa?
Gracias. Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for asking me to be here, because being here, it's like being on the other side of the Mediterranean. Actually, I am with my heart and with my head also there. So during these days, I believe that it was 10 days ago, or maybe a little bit more, in the middle of the Israeli aggression against Gaza, I remember the image of a man who was opening his arms and looking at the camera and saying, "This is what my father gave me, so I'm not leaving, I'm staying here." So this explains to us where this comes from. There is a characteristic of the Palestinian drama. I don't like to use the term conflict, Arab-Israeli conflict, or Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Sometimes we don't have other words, but I need to have a certain perspective, and there was never absolutely a balance between both. So there was an imposition of one side over the other, domination of one side over the other. So we need to think that more than 70% of the population in the Gaza Strip are refugees. So these people who were thrown out of their houses, of their villages in 1948, and their descendants. And this is the heart of all the drama that we have in the Middle East. And what's happening today basically is the result of it. There is a word that, excuse me, what was your name? Imad said that I believe really explains the situation, which is the lack of hope, despair. The Palestinian population has been accumulating despair for decades because there has always been a certain abandonment, a certain passivity, a certain tolerance towards crime that led to this atrocious situation that we're living. There is a word that the press does not use with the word occupation. We should not forget that we're talking about a population that is submitted to an atrocious military occupation in the West Bank and also in Gaza. So this is the background that we're talking about. This is what led to this atrocious also attack of Hamas. And we have to say it because it was directed against civilians, and any attack against civilians is a war crime. The legislation escalation says it. So from the 7th of October until now, how many crimes, war crimes, have been committed by the Israeli forces until now? So I talked about despair, but I want to link it to another word that characterizes all the development of what we call the conflict, which is the impunity. It's a total impunity of Israel. And impunity, we know it, and everyone knows it, that in other circumstances it favors crime and it allows crime to thrive. Because how can we allow that there is not a scandalized reaction of the whole world when you see ambulances, hospitals, schools being bombarded and being sieged? Well, through my son, I know a doctor. Well, actually, he's not a doctor. He is someone from Gaza who is around 50, Mohammed Farha, and he collaborated with an NGO, excuse me, and in 2014, after the Israeli bombardments that were absolutely atrocious, even though they don't seem as awful as the ones what we are seeing now. So with this Catalan NGOs of Clowns Without Borders, he organized a tour there. This is how I met him. So they live in the north, in Jabalia, because where they lived was very dangerous, and then their house disappeared the day after they left. So when the Israeli forces started pushing people towards the south, so he sent his wife and his children towards the south, and he stayed there in the north in order to help in the Al-Auda hospital. This Al-Auda hospital that is in Jabalia has been under siege for many weeks by the army, with snipers who are just they have killed a doctor and a nurse so far, the snipers. So they are dying of hunger in Al-Auda hospital. The audios that Muhammad sends, sometimes he used to send written WhatsApp messages, and now he sends audio messages. He's saying that they have no water, no food. There are more than 200 people who seek refuge in the hospital. This is what people try to do. So not even hospitals are safe. So they are bombing hospitals. They are besieging hospitals without food, without water. And the children, the wounded, are dying. Their wounds are gangrened because they don't have any medicine to give them. And I want to read something. Two of the texts that Muhammad sent us. We have not heard from him now for 3 days, and he sent these messages. These are the very last messages that we received from him. They were sent 10 days ago, maybe. I'm going to look them up on my mobile phone. Where did I put the mobile? Oops.
Bueno, lo siento, no sé. Lo leeré luego.
No, tranquila, lo buscamos. Ahí está.
Gracias. Madre mía. Bueno, me voy a poner las gafas también, ya puestos ya todo.
Anyway, okay, I'm going to put my glasses in order to read the last messages. So the first audio message, he said, excuse me, it's not an audio message, it was a WhatsApp message. He said, despite everything that's happening and everything that will happen in the future, we will never give up. We will continue here, firmed in our land. We will go beyond this, like the phoenix bird, like the olive tree, with our roots in the land and our branches touching the sky. And the second WhatsApp message that he sent 2 days later, he said, at some moments I lost my humanity and I started thinking about vengeance, of desiring to kill those people who are doing this to us. And these feelings and these emotions are very confused and I cannot control them, but I prefer to keep being Muhammad, a human being, Muhammad the generous, Muhammad that rejects violence, Muhammad who is the loving father, Muhammad who is the good friend, Muhammad who is the inspiring colleague. I am a human being and I will continue being a human being. That was the last message that we received from him. Thank you so much. And now Sharon.
Thank you. I will start with continuing my introduction. I'm a peace activist since I was 14. Peace, human rights activist. In October 14, I was 54. It means that for 40 years, I've been a peace activist. As an Israeli, it means that I didn't have to. It was a choice to open my eyes to what most people don't want to see, what's not on the media. And it was painful because nobody wants to be the side that is not righteous, right. I was volunteering for years in Gaza, fighting for human rights. I was blacklisted under Shamir government. I've been shot in my stomach by 2 rubber salted covered bullets by the IDF while standing in front of a Palestinian march in Bil'in, and even recognized as a wounded of the Intifada. And I read the questions. What I'm trying to say here, that I'm a peace activist. I'm not working for that. I don't receive, it's not a salary. I've never received a salary for activism, but I've been a full-time activist all my life. I believe in peace. It's my core belief. I believe in human rights. It's my core belief. And I believe that everything is solvable, everything, if you have goodwill, if you want to solve it. I believe in communication and I believe in truth. And I believe that this event is so one-sided that I shouldn't have participated in it for my well-being. And yet I'm here. I've been a peace activist all my life, and I hear you, speaker after speaker, party mad, not mentioning October 7. Do you think that by ignoring October 7 you can achieve anything? Do you think that you can achieve peace while ignoring one side and see only one side, by painting one side as totally black and the one side as totally white? Do you really believe that any conflict can be solved like this? Or is it just so nice to feel righteous? I'm sure you all feel very good about caring about the Palestinians, but if you cannot condemn October 7, you're not a peace activist. You're okay with atrocities against human beings, against civilians. You think that there's a context where it's okay. Now, no, attacking civilians is not okay. Not on Palestine and not on Israel. It's Simply not. There is no context that will say that it's okay. Amani, I appreciate you, but I'm sorry. We don't say to women, we don't believe you. Not on rape, and you know that. We believe you first, even if you're an Israeli. People were murdered in a party, in a peace rave. People I know from my activism. People that used to drive Palestinians from Gaza, from Erez to their hospitals and back. Peace activist, human rights activist. One of them, it took 6 weeks to recognize her body. Families were murdered in their houses, and they took their time. Yes, Israel is doing horrible things, but so does Hamas. Hamas is not all Palestinians. There is Hamas who has done atrocities and declared that will continue to do atrocities against civilians. And no, Hamas didn't attack on October 7 because it was the only way to release prisoners by abducting Israelis. And even if so, and it's so far-fetched, it's to minimize the conflict to almost nothing to say that. Even if so, how is it okay to target children as abductees? Sorry, no. There's no way we can justify October 7 and call ourselves peace activists, just like I cannot justify the amount of kills of civilians in Gaza and keep calling myself a peace activist. You wouldn't, but I don't call you a peace activist if you cannot look at what happened at October 7 and accept that a horrible thing happened on both sides. If you can't look at this, you can't solve it. As a peace activist, when I was 14, the first thing that I've learned was that we have to see the other as human. But you don't see us like that. You don't believe that we have the right to exist. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free? How? How? How about from the river to the sea, human rights and democracy? There is no context that can explain October 7. But yes, there's a lot of context that can explain such rage. When Israel withdraw, you can look before that and see, yes, Israel have bigger weapons. Hamas attack on October 7 was not the first. Yes, not like October 7. October 7 was so huge that Israel will not be the same. There's Israel before October 7 and Israel after October 7. And if you can't recognize this, you will achieve nothing. And why are you activists for if you don't want to achieve anything? I would love to achieve peace. I can only do it with people that can see both sides, with compassion, really see both sides. If you're not willing to pay that price, you'll achieve nothing. The context for October 7 is despair. The Palestinians in Gaza have been neglected by Israel, blocked by Israel on one side, blocked by Egypt on the other side. You know that, right? I mean,
so
it's not just us. Yes, I know.
Sorry, we should.
Yes, I know, but I'm not speaking that long, so I'll give myself 1 more minute. You can look at the context. You can look at that context of two people that have been going at each other since 1929. Do you want to go before that? We can always look what was happened before that. And no, I'm not saying that to justify everything that Israel is doing. It's not justifiable. but October 7 is definitely not justifiable. And if you want to achieve peace, and you're talking about a circle of violence only in Palestine, then what circle it is? Where's Israel in the circle? Then there's no problem, right?
Tenemos que cerrar el primer turno.
We're very sorry. We need to finish the first round of questions because we went too long. So basically, of course, that we no one can justify violence, and if we try to find ways for peace, we need to understand all the context of the conflict, and we have to take into consideration the lack of balance that we have also in this conflict. But anyway, so now we are going to move on to the second question, in which I propose for the response to start with Ahmad, and then Teresa, and then Amani, and then we'll give the floor to Sharon. So I want to ask you the second question. The violent and disproportionate reaction of the Israeli government is generating one of the biggest killings of the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip, and also maybe less, but also relevant in the West Bank. What do we know about the real intention of the government of Israel? Is his only goal is to liberate the people who were captured and capture also the responsibles of Hamas, or is there another most important goal, like provoke a new Nakba, as many analysts have said this? How can violence affect the Palestinian population that's suffering in the construction of the peace for the future? How does violence affect what Israel is doing for the population to reach an agreement between Israel and Palestine?
Again, on question 2, I distilled it because there was 15 questions in question 2. And here we're talking about the Israeli government's reaction to October 7th. What were the intentions? What is their intention? And as been described, is it to create another new Nakba, or free the hostages, or destroy Hamas? What is their intention here? Let me cover that quickly, and I'll go to the subsets of the other questions within question 2. The Israeli government, look at the stakeholders. When you have a reaction to October 7th, there's been a carnage of your population, the largest, most severe infiltration by Hamas or any other Palestinian group inside Israel. You have, at that beginning stages, still not sure about the numbers, but the numbers kept changing from 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,500. It was really chaotic. The initial reaction of the Israeli government was that there was no immediate reaction. That was the biggest security lapse, intelligence lapse, that the Israeli government, the IDF, the infrastructure, the most sophisticated technological advanced from intelligence to armament to informers to you name it, couldn't predict that some bunch of Hamas fighters are going to go on a propeller and go over and infiltrate and go into a party and massacre these kids dancing and tripping on acid, and on the other side going to the kibbutzim and going from house to house and killing people. Where was the Israeli security forces? Where was the police? Where was the military? That was the first reaction of the Israeli government. No reaction. They were ill-prepared. They were so in their own, how do we say it in Spanish? To drink your own Kool-Aid, to think that you are safe and sound from any form of infiltration by the other. So first of all, the Israeli government's response at that point is like, okay, wow, we have messed up on all of these fronts. And don't forget the context. Just before October 7th, the most continuous public, Israeli public protests against the Netanyahu's right-wing extremist government. These are not my words. These are Israelis themselves. Hundreds of thousands in the streets, from judicial reform to you name it what. They were cutting and eradicating the democracy that is bestowed upon a certain segment of that population. Here I'm talking about the Israelis. When Israelis are seeing their democracy being washed down, they reacted.
I found this on the web.
And so, yeah. And this is important because, first of all, Netanyahu government under domestic pressure. Number two, a right-wing government, coalition government. If you know Israeli politics, they've got to figure it out through the Knesset, through different parties that come together. Netanyahu is so politically bankrupt that the only people that would actually come and join his coalition are the fringes of the extreme of even Israel political spectrum that also want from the river to the sea, let it be Israel, and by extension, God knows where else it has been written 2,500 years ago. These are the mindsets that occupy the key seats of the government of Israel. From defense to foreign ministry, to education, to health, to coordination, internal security, external foreign relations, all of that. So, first reaction, no reaction. Number two, domestically they were under pressure. Policy-wise, they were stripping and going at it to get the judiciary out of their way. And in this context, October 7 happens. Then what? Then what? One man, this Bibi, thank God that we are mortals and one day everybody has to go. Because not only has he hijacked his own Israeli politics, he has hijacked the ability for a real, viable solution to be tabled. When you bring the filth of what is composition of the Netanyahu's government, then filth we will see in its outpour. So for his own political survival and the lack of response initially, he was confronted with two directions. I'm going to bomb out of Gaza. I'm going to make sure that in this case, I bring the file out that has been sitting there for 15 years, for 20 years, for 5 years, that we will settle this war. We will level Gaza. We will make sure that they cannot stand up again for what they've done to Israel and to my political future. This is a maniac in power. Understand that. And there's a lot of maniacs, unfortunately, in our region, in high positions, and the same goes for Hamas. Because within the Palestinians, there's also a spectrum of political ideologies and thoughts. And Hamas, within Gaza, and its position politically and militarily vis-à-vis Israel, third, fourth largest, most technologically advanced adversary. What do you think you're going to do? Go over this fence and do what? So then we have to ask ourselves, what was the purpose of that? And here, I'm sorry to say, it's not to free the Palestinian prisoners. No, my darlings, I wish it was the case. I'm sorry. But it is for their own survival. They're also trying to play their political game. They are seeing left, right, and center their Arab, Muslim friends of the region selling them for cheap within the Abraham Accords, exchanging for F-16s and letting the Palestinians be forgotten. So they saw that at this point they need to change something. They need to do something. And this was their reaction. Put these things in context. But what has happened in reaction is that there's a whole political, social, media, they're taking the pain and anger and the frustration and the insecurity of the Israelis and saying, we're going to respond with not just a hammer, we're going to go in and we're going to show them what we've got. to the point that one of their unknown ministers, this is how mad this government of Israel is. One of their own ministers like, yeah, maybe we should drop a nuclear bomb on these animals. Look at their Minister of Defense saying we should treat them worse than animals. We should not even give them water. We should not give them this. I want you to see that because that's not Israeli public. Get this right, the difference between public and government. Government policies, government institutions, that is one thing, and the people are different. Those hundreds of thousands that poured into the streets may have gone to counter the Netanyahu government for their own democracy, not extended to the Palestinians, their own. But the most important thing was that within that movement, there was already a great awakening within so many Israelis of the blindness that they had previously of what is happening on the other side in their name. So, again, we will get to a more hopeful place later on, and I will get there. But I want you to know that this aggressive, vengeful, revengeful response by the Israeli government and its military is rooted in the insanity and blood-hungry and politically like trying to survive his own political life because or he will be in a court case for his corruption. To the last Palestinian, to the last Israeli, Netanyahu will let bleed so he can stay in power. We have that problem. But his time is up soon too. Mark my words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bueno, voy a empezar diciendo.
I would like to start by saying that, of course, right to self-defense is a human right for countries and for people. But right to self-defense is not the same as right to retaliation. Self-defense, according to international law, is well defined. It means when you are attacked, you have the right to defend yourself. It doesn't mean later, but at the moment where you are being attacked. To establish a comparison, the Ukraine is being invaded right now by Russia. They might think it was better to negotiate an agreement to end with peace, but they had the right to defend themselves. When invoking self-defense because of the Hamas attack, I think this is out of place for two reasons. Hamas is not attacking right now. This is retaliation. Second, we are speaking about an occupied territory, which is not exactly the same. One state attacking the other, then the military group, a terrorist group attacking a territory of a different state from the position of being an occupied, submitted to occupation population, so a people that has been occupied. When they say from the river to the sea, blah, 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 they are denying our right to existence from the very beginning, from the start when the colonization of the Zionist movement started in the end of 1919, not at the end of the Second World War, but in 1919, they have counted with the protection of the great powers of the moment. It was Great Britain back then, and now it's the United States. Israel was never in risk of extermination. A different thing might be the feelings of people who have suffered painful moments because of the Nazi Europe and what happened with the Nazis. But the Israeli population is not in risk of extermination. It is the Palestinian population in risk of extermination, and they are being suffering under a strategy of extermination. This is what the Gaza bombarding is about. Sieging hospitals, blocking the entrance of water, basic food, basic medicine. A hospital is the symbol of what is sacred. A hospital is a place where work is being carried out to put an end to suffering and death, to remedy suffering and death. There are only 2 hospitals that have not been attacked yet, because all Gaza hospitals have been attacked, evacuated. Out of 36 hospitals in Gaza, I think only 11 are left only. I can't really say they're working. The Al-Auda hospital has nothing. Patients are dying in the hallways. People are dying in the corridors because of a lack of medicine and food. So it's important to look at the facts. The recent history of Palestine, and by this I mean end of 1919 until now, we can see everything is very well documented. From the very start, it has been efficiently covered. This is why we're still finding people who are denying the ethnical cleansing of 1948. No serious historian can deny this happened. It's well documented. We know the numbers and the names of towns that were leveled by excavators so that nobody could try and recover their homes again. They were expelled, and there was an ethnic cleansing. We know what the population census were done by the British government in 1947, the land ownership, everything was documented. What this reflects is an atrocious operation of the emptying of the population in the region. Obviously, this is not a question now. But we cannot forget that, because this is also at the root of the issue, and this is why we need to keep on speaking about refugees. This is why I said more than over 70% of the population in Gaza are refugees. And this is why some of the behavior patterns by the current Israeli government are very similar to the 1948 patterns. And this is why I was speaking about a man who said to the camera, I am living what my grandfather already lived back in his time. If we forget this, then it's like forgetting, as Europeans, that the Nazi horror happened. Why are we asking the Palestinians to forget that they were expelled from their lands? We are not asking for unjust justice for Palestinians. However, there is no negotiation or negotiated solution possible, or non-violent solution, if it is not through acknowledging the pain and the harm caused to the Palestinian lives, homes, households, families, because this is not an equal to equal situation, level to level situation by 2 equal parties. What is it? What we have? What do we have today? Just an increase of hatred, not just in the Palestinian people who feel they are being trampled on. It is the Israeli governors, and also we have fanatics in other societies, but when a minister of defense says something like they are not human, they are animals, we're speaking about something very, very serious. When a president of a country says there is no distinction between civilians and Hamas members, because they are both military targets, we are speaking about something that is very serious, and this is why this is an extermination strategy, what's happening right now. There is no comparison possible between the rockets that Hamas has been launching in the last years against Israeli territory with high technology missiles with which Israel is attacking Gaza. There's no comparison possible between melt-lead operation, etc., with one of the most sophisticated armaments in the world. Rockets can kill somebody, but I think they should be lucky lucky to kill somebody, they should be very close. They look more like stones than missiles. I'm not saying they're not weapons. I'm not justifying this launching of rockets. I'm just saying, please don't compare. Let's not think that launching the Hamas rockets is the same than the Israeli missiles. And the Israeli army has been using these missiles for the last 17 years. The Gaza population has been submitted to a human blockage, an atrocious blockage. And this is something else we cannot forget if we really want to speak about peace through negotiation. There has been a mention of the two states again. President Sanchez spoke about it in the United Nations. Yes, this proposition was on the table before. Why is it not feasible? Because the Israeli policy has been to keep on colonizing the Gaza territories so that there is no territory practically for the future Palestinian state. And this has been done with the agreement of Europe and total absolute impunity. And I would even say every colony established in occupied territory is not an urbanization, as the Israeli government propaganda says. It's not just an urbanization in the settlement. It is a territory expropriated to a Palestinian person or family. There's army around the settlement with fences, walls, and troops. A road that can only be used by Israelis. This is apartheid. The Palestinians cannot use those roads. Human rights groups, Amnesty International, have called it apartheid. And this is what's been happening in the last decades. And this has made the two-state solution unfeasible because they have eaten up all the territory left, and we have let them do it. Israeli politicians, Mr. Netanyahu, he publicly said many, many times that there will never be a Palestinian state. He will never consent to having a Palestinian state between the Jordan River and Israel if we cannot force the UN resolutions to be respected, if we cannot make international law to be the base for every peace agreement, then this nothing can be done. There has been no will to impose international law. Who should this international law be imposed to? Well, those who are breaking international law, the occupying country, the occupying power, not the occupied country. I will leave it there.
Amani?
Honestly, after Imad and Teresa, despite the fact that I'm Palestinian, I feel speechless now. I feel so proud. My heart is filled with warmth now. That it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to see it tangibly, how people are so knowledgeable, and they are even as equal as Palestinians in advocating for our rights and our freedom, like calling for our freedom, calling for the realization of our self-determination, and understanding the root causes and the actions, and calling what happened as a reaction. This is the way it should be described. And going back to Sharon, you know, we are here in a platform that is based on respect, of course, understanding of each other. And believe me, Sharon, it is not an easy task for me as a Palestinian to be here in a platform where there is an Israeli speaking while there is a genocide committed against my people. And despite all of this, we have a proverb in Palestinian. We say, you mix oil with water. You can imagine, if you mix oil with water, you try to hide it, right? You try to make a mixture, but still the oil will be separated from water. Then you cannot mix up the truth with propaganda. And it's obvious that, and I'm so sorry for saying this, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, that you are not ready with an open heart to have a discussion with a Palestinian whose people, with Palestinian people being killed right in this moment, and their houses are being bombed, and the children are being targeted, and come and say, let's condemn what Hamas did. Do you condemn your government, Sharon? Do you condemn giving hundreds of thousands of settlers weapons and guns, even including civilian Israelis? Ben Gvir's government and these idiots' governments, they give away guns for settlers and Israeli citizens to shoot any Palestinian who would be suspicious for them. Give me one Palestinian who would not be suspicious. Me and my kids were attacked by settlers, and we were literally about to be killed. We were surrounded by settlers who were holding guns, and we were saved by a car, a Palestinian car, who tried to ram them in order to distort all of them, who were trying to kill me and my kids in the car. And if these Palestinians really killed the settlers, of course, what would they be called? Terrorists. All freedom fighters in the world are called freedom fighters. All liberation movements are called liberation movements. But Palestinians, if they want to defend themselves, they are terrorists. Imagine, Sharon, me passing a checkpoint, I have to delete all of the applications on my mobile. You know why? Because I might be accused of engaging in the consumption of terrorist information. It means if I follow a channel on Telegram or an account on WhatsApp or Instagram that supports Hamas or the Palestinian people in one way or another, I will be accused of being engaged or consuming terrorist information. And this would put me in prison for at least 1 year, if not under administrative detention that has no sentence. It might be for lifetime. 1 week ago, and I have the video, I expected to have a presentation just to show you some of the scenes, but we prefer to have it as a discussion because we want to have this interactive platform. I have this video with me. I was going to pick up my kids from school, and I was not stopped actually, I was chased by soldiers, and I was forced to be stopped, and I was intimidated. I was harassed by a soldier, verbally and physically, and he wanted to shoot me in the head. I raised my hands, and I was crying. You know why? It's the first time I cry at a checkpoint, because I remembered that I have 2 boys I have to take care of. They used to live with my family in the US for 3 years, and decided to bring them back to Palestine because I want them to be connected to Palestine. I want them to live this suffering, to remember that they have to struggle. They have to fight for Palestine with their education, with their knowledge, with their science, with their representation in all platforms. I don't urge them to kill. I urge them to know the truth and know how to communicate the truth and to defeat all of the propaganda all over the world. As much as they are knowledgeable and educated, as much as we have more people like you who are aware of the truth. And this for us means more power, more power. We want our power to go to be all over the world. This is exactly what we want. We want more people like you to mobilize their governments, to have public mobilization, to put pressure on their governments, to hold accountable these perpetrators, these duty bearers, these who are spending the tax money on providing weapons for perpetrators, for killers of children. And I hope you as citizens will have at least 1% of this dignity, of this value you have for the human lives that you have. I hope so. Imagine only one country controls the destiny of all of this population, by saying no to ceasefire? What kinds of human rights is this? Who put the human rights values in the first place? Colonialist states that won World War? Based on which values? It was mentioned already, you cannot put perpetrators and victims in the same scale and say this and they're equal. They're not equal, believe me. Believe me, if you put a baby in the corner and start beating this baby will defend himself or herself. They will not stay silent. And all over the world, Myanmar, South Sudan, all over the world, we are proudly saying that this was the liberation movement. Yes, and we as Palestinians, we are not less than any other nation. We are not less than any other population. We have scientists, we have teachers, we have brilliant people, intelligent people, intellectual people, especially from Gaza. Especially from Gaza. The literacy rate in Palestine is more than 98%. We don't have people who are illiterate. But you know what? In many communities, children cannot go to their schools. They have to study on a candlelight in their tents because they were forcibly transferred, displaced from their communities. Since October 7th, more than 1,200 Palestinians were forcibly displaced from their communities, and now they are living in tents at least 4 and 5 kilometers away from the nearest village around them that has a school. And all children of these communities, they dropped out of the school because their families are fearful for their safety. Can you imagine, since October 7th, whenever I send my kids to school with a school bus, I follow them with my car because I do not, I never know if I will see them again or not. Because I always have this scenario in my head, oh, maybe if they are killed, I want to see them for the last time. I want to be close to them. Imagine a woman who is a feminist and who calls for women's rights and who was in platforms where Israeli women from religious groups, they were present and they were condemning the Israeli state for treating them as not a second-class citizen, as no-class citizen, being harassed in front of her kids and taking away her child from her, pointing a gun in his head in order for her to give them the phone. Imagine the powerful woman who is protecting other women feeling powerless in front of her kids. She is the only one for them in life. She is the only source of strength. What kind of degradation is this? And believe me, I would rather to die but not seeing any woman suffer. We women, we all relate to each other's suffering. We all suffer discrimination. We all suffer intimidation. We know patriarchy. It's all over the place. It's not only in communities, it's in politics. It's in politics, Sharon. And you guys need to understand that. But what happened is away from truth. It's based on the Israeli journals and newspapers. It's what Haaretz said. It's what Jerusalem Post said. It's what Israeli analysts and right-wing analysts said. There is rape, but there's no evidence. We were busy to collect evidence. And this doesn't make sense. How many times did you condemn the harassment and rape of Palestinian female prisoners inside Israeli prisons? Let's talk about double standard. Why don't Palestinian women have the right to be protected from violence, rape, harassment, given the fact that they live in a very patriarchal society, very patriarchal structure, and soldiers, settlers, and Israelis, they are using the cultural card against Palestinians. They punish the Palestinian families with their daughters, with their wives. They force women to strip search in front of their husbands. I myself was beaten to do a strip search, and I refused. You know what? I was beaten where? On my scar, after coming back from a medical journey, medical trip, because I refused to do the strip search in front of the guards. the Israeli guards. This is just, it's not only about me. Maybe I'm privileged to be here, to talk before all of you, to be given this mic and to have my voice out loud. But this is one story of millions of stories. 2 million Palestinian people in Gaza are displaced now, living thirst, living hunger, living weather, like winter conditions, cold weather without clothing. Imagine, women, they have to cover the heads of their children to protect them from rain. Imagine these shelters, or what they call shelters, actually these shelters, the UNRWA shelters, they are just next to garbage dump, no bathrooms, no sanitary, no hygiene. People are living epidemics and deteriorating health conditions, away from the injuries, the 50,000 injuries, away from all of what's going on because of the bombing. But these women, what about them? What about them? I just want to answer the political question. The brutal war about the Israeli government.
In 1 minute, if you can.
I just want to emphasize that I agree with what has been said about Netanyahu. It's a mix of an individual role of an Israeli prime minister who doesn't want to end the war, but wants to revenge and to regain his popularity by destroying as much as possible of the Palestinians' infrastructure, killing as much as possible of the Palestinian civilians, and to create a situation of fear of any expected resistance that might happen in the future. This, of course, it proved to be a failure, and it will prove to be a failure. As they did in 48, they expelled Palestinians to Egypt and Jordan. What they are trying to do and what they are exactly doing, they are making it impossible, unlivable situation in Gaza, so that they will be forcibly displaced or transferred to Egypt and Europe. And the conspiracy was finally revealed against the Palestinians by all nations, by Arabs, by the US. It was obvious, and Trump made it more obvious, luckily, by the Europeans, who cut funding on Palestinian human rights organizations and Israeli organizations the first day of war without even blinking. This revealed all of this conspiracy, but they will never succeed to move these endogenous, the people who have right to this land, the people who have existed in this land and will exist forever in this land. Of course, the demographic threat is another point for Netanyahu's government. 7.5 million this year on both sides. And this, of course, will lead Netanyahu to continue the war, to regain the popularity, to market for his electoral campaign. But as Ahmad mentioned, more and more Israelis are getting aware of what is hidden in his agenda. They are going on protests, calling to end occupation, and I'm sure this movement will be mobilized and will be extended to include as much people as possible. Media and social media are not filtered like before. People can reach out to the truth. They will not wait until the truth reach out to them. People do not believe only what they see and what they read on social media. They dig deeper. They read between the lines, and they are curious to know what's happening behind the scenes.
Thank you, Amani. Bueno, vamos a seguir con...
Okay, we're going to continue now with the next question. Excuse me. No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm a bit lost here. Well, we believe that there was a lot to say here, and it was complicated to limit the interventions to 5 minutes. So, yeah. Okay. So, Sharon, we're going to hear your response about the second question. I'll give you the floor.
I need to keep to the 5 minutes. So I could have responded to the previous two speakers, but it seems like reality has collapsed into itself and only half of reality is existed. Trust me, I mean, there's so much to say, but I would like to respect the time and my time too, and the understanding that we probably don't really see eye to eye, and it's okay. I mean, it's heartbreaking because, as I said, I've been an activist all my life. And I can tell you so many stories. And I can tell you that I've not been as privileged or being able to live elsewhere, but I am committed to always find solutions. And you cannot find solutions when you're not willing to accept the whole truth and not just half of it. So it is a bit heartbreaking for me, this event, I have to say, but not as heartbreaking as the reality. But just that I always hope for partners that really want to solve it. You can't say on one hand that, I mean, of course you can say whatever you want. But no, Israel is not committing a war crime because it's continuing its attacks. It's not that October 7 happened and since then nothing. I mean, you cannot totally ignore the truth, which is that every day Hamas, apart from the ceasefire, Hamas is bombing Israel. And while bombing Israel, also a hospital, the hospital in Ashkelon, more than once. In October 7th, paramedics, ambulances were not targeted by accident from the air. They were targeted physically, face to face, and the medics and paramedics and doctors were killed within the ambulance. And yes, you cannot compare between Hamas rockets and our missiles, and yet I am not sure how Spain will react if Spain will be bombed by these rockets, bombs, stones that can still break down a house. I'm not sure how Spain would react to that. I'll go from here to answer the question, actually. The violence and disproportional reaction of the Israeli government is causing one of the largest massacres. There is no proportionate answer to what happened in October 7. What will be a proportionate answer? That we will go rape Amani, maim, cut off parts of member families in front of the other members' families until we reach the same number? Will that be proportionate? I mean, to say that there's a proportional reaction that we can agree on is to agree on violence. So there is no proportional reaction. Period. And please, I didn't interrupt anyone, and by God, I mean, you talked long. So please don't interrupt me as well. Even if I'm the hated Israeli. I mean, the devil himself. I'm even wearing red, which is, by the way, the color that women in Israel wear if they support women's rights and believe all women. Yeah. So there is no proportionate reaction, period, to something like this, because violence is wrong. What's not understood here? The second part is, what do we know about the true intentions of the Israeli government? What do we know about the true intentions of any of the leaders here? We know that Netanyahu wants one thing, and the one thing that Netanyahu wants is to survive himself and his family. And for that, he will sell everybody. Imad, for example, talked about the first reaction of the Israeli army, and which is part of the Israeli collective trauma, which is that we always believed that help will come, and no help came for some places for 2 days. And one of the reasons that that happened was that the Gaza, the kibbutzim around Gaza, which are leftists, were stripped from army support in order to secure settlers and ministers and settler members of parliament in their provocation in the West Bank. So as you can see, in a way, the Israeli left was abandoned by everybody, including the international left, by the way, because these people, as I said, were always supportive of human rights and peace, but they were abandoned on October 7. And no, the reaction of the Israeli government had nothing to do with the hostages. The Israeli government didn't care about the hostages, and they only started to when they realized that there is a big movement inside Israel's civil society that says, less aggression, please, first the hostages, we need to save the hostages. There are living people, families, children, elderly, women, and women that were raped inside the Hamas, held by Hamas, and this is the priority, and it took Israel a long time, and the Israeli government is still not doing anything to release the hostages. It's other powers that are doing it, not the Israeli government. They don't care. The hostages are mostly leftists. And the funny thing that you can see is leftists around the world, especially extremists, going and tear down the hostages posters, just like the Israeli far right. You know, those settlers. Amazing. The next thing is...
Thank you, Sharon. We have to get finished soon. And creo que sería bueno...
I believe we will never have time. We will never have time to continue with the two other questions. And as Ahmad said, there are 15 questions within each one of the questions, and there are too many things to answer to. And as we are in this space in which we try to find ways for peace, ways to find solutions for the conflict, I would really want to ask all of you this very complicated questions, which is actually only one here. What can we do? What are the steps that we could make in order to build peace? What could we do from here, from Barcelona? Are there any ways that Barcelona could contribute to find these solutions? And I would like also I would like you, please, to answer opening a perspective of opportunities and alternatives to build peace. Sharon, if you wish to start first, and then I will give the floor to Imad, and then to Teresa, and then to Amani. Thank you.
As I said, peace can only achieve when people actually want it. You have to want peace. In order to want peace, you have to imagine peace. Now, there are great solutions like the Arab Peace Initiative. Imad might want to say some other things about it, but as the Middle East Treaty Organization, we are looking at solutions that are regional. The Arab Peace Initiative is exactly one of those, and this is where we're going to focus in 2024 as people that actually going forward to what might work. For the Barcelona peace movement, I would like to suggest trying to see both sides. I know it feels less righteous right now. I know that it feels wrong to actually see the Israelis, but who is going to give you what it is that you want? I mean, who's going to end the occupation? Do you think that you can achieve it by ignoring the Israelis? If you can't talk to the Israelis, how can you persuade the Israelis to stop the occupation? And in order to talk to the Israelis, you actually have to see the Israelis, to be willing to see the other. When I started to work on a nuclear weapon-free zone and a weapon of mass destruction-free zone in the Middle East, the first thing that I needed to learn was what frightens the Iranians, what frightens some of the Arab states, what frightens Israel. If I don't see that, I can't write or imagine a solution that might work. And if I can't imagine a solution that can work, how can I sell it to those who are still so afraid that they cannot see solutions? And by that, I think I have to leave because I have another Zoom in 5 minutes. I'll try to stay a little bit longer.
Thank you. Iman.
How many minutes do we have on this?
I'm not sure. 5
Single?
minutes.
Single. All right. Tell me when I'm at 5 minutes, please. Thank you. All right. Solutions time, yeah? Doesn't feel like it, but we need solutions. All right, you know what? Forget the notes. Let me just say it the way I believe it, but also feel it. I'm the Iranian here. I'm not a Palestinian. I'm not an Israeli. I have worked with Sharon for many years. I want to say one thing that is extremely important. Sharon has stood up to her government. The fact that she, for the past, by verbalizing it over and over again, and she's been there 40 years, pushing, taking the bullet, you know, doing what she needs to do. And she has a roster of a resume that puts a lot of people to shame who are at the forefront of seeking freedom for Palestinians. I say that before I start because it is the Sharons in Israel, by the way, for her to even be present here. Thank God she has to go off so I can speak even more freely. She's under surveillance. She's been arrested by the Israeli government over 30 times. She's been stripped of any opportunities she can have to even make an earning. She has put her home that she inherited, the one thing that she had, she's put it so that she can continue doing, she's put it for sale so she can continue doing this work. I'm saying this because it's important. It's important that we do see the other, and within the other, not just have sympathy, as I can have for the Palestinians, I can also have for those who died in the kibbutzim. But sympathy is not enough. Empathy would be great too, huh? Wouldn't it be great? Empathy is like, I put my foot inside your shoe. I feel what the Palestinians feel. I've been to Gaza twice. I have lost dear friends in Gaza in this conflict. And yes, that one tick, when you send a message, makes your heart sink. But empathy without compassion is useless. Empathy without compassion is useless. If you don't have compassion, then your empathy can become like those analysts who will look at the situation in Palestine, in Israel, in the region and say, well, we understand them, we feel them. But they are not it. They're not embodiment of that. We need to have compassion, empathy, and beyond that, we need to seek the truth. And the truth is complex. The truth is not black and white. Yes, Hamas has done really stupid shit, and the Israelis have also done so. And the Palestinian people have suffered for long enough, and the Israelis will bring their own traumas from Europe, from this bloody continent, that then you can go back and say, you know, it was actually the British that fucking sold this to everybody. And today it's the Americans that are actually backing this carnage to continue. It is also Spain, the second largest weapons exporter in the world. And half of that goes to the Middle East. What do you think these bombs and these means of war are coming from? They're not coming from poof. They're coming from places that are supposed to be beacons of human rights and democracy. This is the madness. You say what we can do for the future? I will tell you that if we are able to have compassion and empathy and seek the truth, and the truth is complex, the truth is hard to find, and yes, the algorithms will screw you and me in thinking that in our bubble we have the truth. No, you don't. You've got to understand that the picture is wide and big and complex. The problem, though, is not that complicated. The problem that we are facing are peoples who are there and are stuck. They're stuck. The Palestinians are stuck, the Israelis are stuck, and God tell you, Iranians and the whole bloody region is stuck. So, how do we move forward from that individual level, see the other, seek the truth, but do it through love and compassion? And you know what? That sounds very Christian. Well, you know what? Jesus was also a brown rebel Jew who came from this region. So, 3 quick proposals. Number 1, the Arab Peace Initiative is something that the Arabs and the Iranians, by extension, the Organization of Islamic States, and Israel at least entertains the idea of addressing this on a regional level. Because as we mentioned, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not a locale that is exclusive to its own. Everybody has a piece in this pie. From the Iranians to the Saudis, to the Emiratis, to the Qataris, to the Egyptians, to the Americans, to the Brits, to the EU, and including the Spaniards. Everybody's in it for different reasons. So we need a regional approach that is backed by an international community. An international community is big, it's 198 countries, and I tell you, with the exception of a handful, everybody knows where they should stand on this. So, regional approach, and I will tell you all about API, the Arab Peace Initiative. If you need, you can reach us. Number 2, go back. Again, what can you do? Your Spanish government, and Barcelona, I love you, but Barcelona, you're not Spain. And Spain has a foreign policy. And that foreign policy can only be shifted and adjusted if you live in a democracy. Use your power of democracy. Use your voice. Use your skill sets. Protesting against Israel in the streets is marvelous, but it has to be in combination with your own grassroots, in forcing, going in front of every military, industrial complex, manufacturing site that is exporting these things to the region. You go to your government and say, we don't want this to be done in our names. You have a lot of leeway. Use your rights. Use your power. Use the ability that you actually have a voice, not the voiceless of Gaza. This is where your strength is. And number three, I will end with this. Not long ago, and Sharon, you know this, my love. Not long ago, the Europeans butchered each other. Not once, but twice. First World War, you guys were that stupid, and then you did it again. Second World War happens, you massacre more. By 1945, you have killed 80 million of your own. 80 million of your own. Berlin was leveled, London was leveled, and your Franco didn't want to get involved, but we know how cozy he got to the Axis. So when I'm saying this to you, I'm speaking from the future. Sharon, myself, and the Arabs and the internationals that are part of our little NGO are the future today. We see a future where a Palestinian and Israeli and an Iranian and Arab and of every color can go and have breakfast in Jerusalem, lunch in Beirut, and dinner in Tehran. It's possible. Because you know what? In 1945, that seemed like a madman or a woman who would come and say, let's make a European Union. Oh, maybe we like the Germans. Oh, the French are not that bad either. Are you crazy? After 80 million dead, you guys pulled off the European Union. That's the best thing you got. 70 years of peace, and you're starting to dismantle it without even knowing what you're giving up on. And so what we're going to do, from the wreckages and the blood of our people in this region, we're going to build our own Middle East Union. You may not see it now, but I see it. I live it. And I will take the risks, and I continue to do so, because I believe that, wallahi, if the Palestinians would have been given a choice to move somewhere else next to Norway, maybe they would have thought about it. If you tell that to the Israelis, they will also say, you know what, it would have been nice to be next to Spain. Portugal was nice before you guys kicked us out. So I'm saying this because they're stuck. They cannot drop every Palestinian into the sea, nor can we drop all the Israelis into the sea. So they can't move, we're stuck in a bad neighborhood, and the only way to change a bad neighborhood is to go to the fabric, socio-economic, political, ideological, and help that through education, awareness, capacity building, and what we're doing today. That we can sit on a stage and not butcher each other, but talk to each other. Because ultimately, this will be resolved around the table. It will be resolved around the table. Not tomorrow, maybe not next week. After 15, 20, 50,000 Palestinians are dead, ultimately, the Israelis and the Palestinians will sit down. They've already done so with the exchanges. So we know it's possible. That's the only way. And I came back from Geneva today, and I was in a room at the the Declaration of Human Rights 75th anniversary. And they had a session on the occupied Palestinian territories. That's the official name in the UN system. The room was packed. Palestinians are not alone. It may seem like that, but they're not alone. There is a pulse that is calling for change. And if I looked around the room, I can sense that everybody is looking for a solution. And there are solutions. Give it air, give it oxygen. Don't give oxygen to the fire and violence. Don't take the spiral down to hell, bring it higher up. Elevate your consciousness. And through that, we can do this. And I can help, and you can help us. So come and talk to me. You can find us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Soluciones.
Well, solutions. I don't believe that the solution would be just putting a Palestinian and an Israeli and ask them to talk to each other, to try to understand each other. Just to give you an example. For example, I think it's a good example during apartheid in South Africa. We could think why the white minority is in the power and the majority they're not in the power. Why can't they talk to each other? I don't think this is the solution. This is hiding the solution, actually, because the solution needs to see a reality, face the reality, understand the situation the way it is. And I said it before, one of the main characteristics of what's happening in Palestine and has been happening now for almost a century is the inequality. It's the imposition of one over the other. We're talking about a people that was expulsed manu military from its home. No one paid for this, no one was judged for this, but people were expelled from their homes. So today, think about a solution seems very difficult, because we are in a time where the solution seems very far away. But it seems very far away because there's so much pain, there's so much hatred, there's so much violence accumulated, but there is no real will to face the situation. And what is the real will to face this issue? To find a solution based on international legality, to oblige everyone to respect the international legality, because what we are permitting now, so we say, oh, the Israeli government extends the settlements in because the settlements, basically, besides everything that said before, following the Geneva Convention, the Rome Statute, when we talk about an occupying power that tries to change the demography of the occupied territory, which means to push people from the occupying territories to the occupied territories. This is a war crime, and this has been described by the international legislation. So So each time we have settlers that go to the West Bank, it is a war ground. So what was the position of the international community? So from time to time, the international community would just say that settlements would not favor the peace process. So the first thing that we need is just to oblige everyone to respect the international law, to respect the international legalities, because the United States of America years ago, they really wanted a two-state solution, but despite all, they allowed this solution to be destroyed over and over. So that's why we need to see the reality, face it. It's an atrocious reality of a people that is destroyed, people that was thrown out of its land, and that is under military occupation. We cannot forget this, and as we cannot forget this, this permanent occupation and violence that each and every one of the Palestinians are suffering. And we heard this, I forgot your name, what was it? Oh, well, Anani talked about this. Anyway, so this is the reality. This is the atrocious day-to-day life of occupation, and we don't see this because it does not occupy, the main pages of the press. So if there are at least 100 Palestinians or 20 Palestinians who die, yes, we can write something about them, but we don't talk about the day-to-day. There is not a clear position saying that this is intolerable. And the international community, the problem is that when we talk about the international community, it's a euphemism because it's the United States of America and the European Union. But anyway, in the General Assembly of the United Nations, this is where the world is, because the world is not the EU and the US. And so, for example, the colleague talked about the two European wars, because many times we don't remember that we have a colonial perspective. We don't have colonies anymore, but we have a colonial vision, and we still believe that the Palestinians are poor things. They're suffering, but they're not like us, the Europeans. They don't have the same level of humanity as we have, so therefore their rights are not the same as ours. And we all heard this, the Arabs are very violent, and it is the Europeans who say this. And in our recent history, we had the two major butcheries that we saw in the history of humanity. It was Europeans against Europeans. There was no other foreign power that came. So it was the heart of Europe that killed the other heart of Europe. And we talk about those people as being violent. Of course, it is important to be predisposed for dialogue, but it is not a problem that the Palestinians became crazy, or the Israeli also. No, the problem is systematic. It is a system that is radically unfair, and it is based on the passivity of those who have the power to stop it. And I don't believe that the solution is there where this conflict is happening. The solution is not in the hands of the Palestinians, and I would dare to say that it's not in the hand of the Israelis. It's in the hand of those who can oblige Israel to respect the international legislation. And I've heard very clearly anti-Zionist Israelis who said, please put sanctions on us. We hope to have sanctions because we'll pay a price for what we are doing, because if you don't pay the price, we'll repeat this. It is a basic law. So if you're not paying any price, you continue doing things. Impunity is the problem. The impunity with which Israel is acting today in front of the eyes of the world. We have one of the major atrocious attacks, because really it's a genocide. Let's say things by their name. It is a genocide. It is that you can read in the books, basically. It's very easy. So if we don't have a capacity to stop this, and how are we going to stop this? Obliging those who are attacking to stop attacking, obliging those who are occupying a territory to stop occupying this territory. And as Sharon said, and this is something that I hear a lot of times, and it makes me very nervous. And also we need to define we always talk about the responsibility of Iran because it's the main threat, but we don't forget what the main threat is. The main threat is the occupation. Of course, Iran can be very dangerous, but it is dangerous for its population. It's not dangerous for us. So Iran has enough to do within its borders, and Iran is never going to engage in a war against the United States of America, and I hope it will never do, but I don't think it has even the power or the will to do this. But anyway, in the problem is that we adopt the westernized Israeli message because Israel is the West, and it was created as a version of the West. The Zionist movement had a slogan when they were looking for the support of the UK. So it's the modern West against the barbarian East, and this is the reality. And if we don't accept this reality, what can we do? All the people here, we can put pressure on our governments because we live in democracies, and we know that our governments depend on our votes, and if we put them in a situation where they will see there are many people down the streets, etc. I know that this is not an easy task. It's not the capacity to mobilize people, but it's the capacity also to manage the media, etc. So the first 3 weeks we were seeing in every single main media talking about the war between Israel and Hamas. It was the same slogan, but what the images we were seeing were Palestinian civilians in Gaza dying. This is not a war. This is not a war against Hamas, basically. It is a lie. It is a war against the population of Gaza and also against Hamas. But it was a war that had as a main goal, and I will finish here, I believe, because I didn't say this before, the objective is a second Nakba. I'm very sorry. So basically it was to throw out the Palestinian population from the biggest part of Gaza, because they're all now pushed very close to Rafah, and to really keep at least half of the territory. And why are they doing this? Because they can, because they know that they can do it and nothing will happen. No one is going to face them if we don't change this balance of power that we have in the world, and if we don't in the West or the European governments, we don't do anything, because the Europeans were contaminated by the fact that we believed that we are the land of liberty. But go and now to protest for Palestine in Germany. You cannot even protest in the streets. In France, France, the land of liberty, no one can go down on the streets. So what the hell is happening now? We cannot go to the European institutions. So we're living in a situation of a tremendous unbalance, and to fight against this we need first and foremost not to negate it, to see it, to put a name on it. We are we are facing a genocide. We have to name it the way it is, and if we don't stop it, this genocide is going to extend and become even worse.
Thank you so much. You don't stop to impress me. First of all, I would say that it's not enough to be a peace activist for any of us. Slogans has proven not to be useful at all. We need to take actions. We need to take the side of the truth. We need to say the terminologies and to describe the truth as is, without beautifying the image of genocide, annihilation, destruction of civilian properties, killing of civilians. We need to address things as they are without using the propaganda. Sympathy and compassion, I totally agree with you, and this is actually the main trigger, let's say, and the main motive behind the solidarity, the popular solidarity. Without any underestimation of sympathy and empathy, we need our actions to go beyond this. We need our sympathy and empathy to result into actions on the streets. We need to have our governments, even our people, to walk the talk. In the European and the Western countries in general, it's democratic countries, right? It's supposed to be. Political leaders are elected, right? So there should be an accountability. Exactly. We need to admit together that we do not have effective accountability mechanism. Then we addressed the gap. Let's work on it. Let's fill this gap. Let's hold our governments accountable for their duties, for their responsibilities before the international law. What is being done currently in Gaza is against international humanitarian law. It's against the international law. It's by the IHL. The occupying power cannot confiscate civilians' objects, cannot confiscate civilians and put them under siege, right? What has been going on in Gaza for so many years, it is exactly the same. Why have no one stood up and said, this is against the international law? Who is protecting international law? You guys think the solution is disarmament of all Palestinians. Okay, this is part of many peace initiatives. Then give us a guarantee for our protection. You are giving weapons and guns to settlers, and not you, of course, but I'm speaking on behalf of the many peace initiatives, and they're calling for disarmament of Palestinians. How many Palestinians are armed? Let's speak about the Palestinian security forces. We have so many Palestinians armed, but they are not using their arms against Israelis. The emerging armed groups in the West Bank, it showed up to the surface in parallel with the spike in settlers' attacks and the calls to wipe out whole Palestinian villages, including the village of Hawara, if you heard of it, whose citizens were burnt, and these houses were burnt while the families were inside. Babies were burnt alive. So if you go to a dentist and you want to get your tooth extracted, if you have an infection, he cannot do it, or she cannot do it. They will give you a medicine to treat the infection, and then when you heal, you will extract the tooth. It's exactly the same. We cannot speak about solutions while people are being genocide, while a whole population is being annihilated. We need to stop. We need to cease fire now, and then we go beyond this and speak about solutions. Who the hell can think of solutions when the whole population is being killed unapologetically? The West is supporting Israelis and provide them with a weapon to kill more and more children. No, we cannot speak about any solution, because you cannot put an elephant in the room and then you ask for a solution. No. Palestinians are a party, but is the victim, is the occupied. We cannot ask for negotiation while we do not have equal powers. This is the exact definition of negotiation. You have equal powers, they sit at the table, they discuss possible solutions. We do not have this power. And all treaties, peace treaties and conventions, they failed. Why? Because Israelis, they don't bother to commit to any treaty. They have the weapons, they have the power to, to kill all Palestinians if they say no. And look at the settlements expansion. It's the trigger for all cycles of violence, if you call it violence, while I believe it's an underestimation of what's going on ground. Settlements expansion is the trigger of all cycles of violence in the West Bank, let's say. Forget about Gaza for a moment. What is happening in the West Bank, it's a daily violation for everyone. So we don't have a freedom of movement. People cannot cross checkpoints without degradation, without being searched, without being offended. We have so many killings at checkpoints. We need to have a solution, not a status quo, because enough is enough. 75 years of oppression, no more. We need to afford people normal settings in order for them to think about normal scenarios, normal solutions. You cannot starve a whole population and promise them with a piece of bread, because definitely they will be happy with a piece of bread, because they will die of starvation. I just want to, okay, I have 1 minute. I just would like to convey a message of a coalition of civil society in Gaza. It's called HASH, the International Commission to Support Palestinian Rights. First, the immediate international action. The international community and various organizations are urged to press Israel to cease its ongoing genocide war in Gaza. Compliance with Geneva Convention. High contracting parties to the Geneva Convention must adhere to their ethical and legal duties and urgently act to stop genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. They should provide international protection for civilians, open humanitarian corridors for evacuating the wounded, facilitate the flow of humanitarian relief aid, medical supplies, and life-saving equipment. They should impose boycotts and sanctions on the Israeli occupation and use the principle of universal jurisdiction to hold perpetrators accountable for serious crimes. Persecution by the ICC, the International Criminal Courts. The International Coalition calls on the International Criminal Court prosecutor to stop double standard and selectivity in enforcing international law. It urges the acceleration of investigation to international crimes committed in the OPT, ensuring accountability and justice for victims of the Israeli occupation. UN specialized agencies, Global Solidarity Movement, the international also coalition urges Global Solidarity Movement to continue and escalate their popular and solidarity actions to pressure for the cessation of the Israeli military aggression on Gaza, protect civilians, and take effective measures to prevent a new catastrophe for Palestinians. We don't want to live a new Nakba. We have been living Nakba on a daily basis. We want our children to live in dignity, in justice, in freedom, and human rights. And I'm telling you, there's no single woman on earth who would want her children to die. No woman sends her children to death. Believe me, I'm a mother and I know it. And it would be against sanity if anyone tells you this. If anyone tells you that mothers in Gaza or in Palestine, they raise their children to be killers, they are liars. I'm afraid to allow my children to play outside in the backyard. I don't want them to die. I'm raising them to live in dignity, not to die. And these children, they have the right to live their future, their dreams, to fulfill their ambitions, and to pursue also their life. So stop the war, free Palestine, and thank you for all of the freedom fighters. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. I'm so privileged, and I will go back to Palestine with more strength, with more power, and with a louder voice, because you gave me so much strength. And I realized that we are not alone. And thank you for this amazing speakers. I can't thank you enough. I'm speechless to show my impression and to show my appreciation to your words, to your knowledge. I wish you can meet as much Palestinians as possible to show them how much you care. Thank you so much. This is what we need.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take one more minute. I hear this. I know it sounds like there's no solutions. And I hear you that we have to have the conditions for then talking about solutions. The day will come. The day will come where we actually have to have solutions. Our biggest problem is that we are not prepared for solutions. I have seen this over and over again. My job is to work with conflicts and with people who don't want to talk to each other. So when we were talking about Iran's nuclear program, that's how I entered into this world. Actually, I entered with Israel and Palestine. But anyway, fast forward. What I'm trying to say is that negotiations started not during Ahmadinejad, but they had fruits of labor during Obama and Rouhani's time under Iran. Gigi? No, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. So I wanted to say that we should at least try to have solutions prepared, thought about, and bring a collective together. So when the time is right, when the ceasefire happens or the end of this carnage happens, we're not left clueless about which direction to go. That's the problem on the left and peace groups. Because on the other side, the Netanyahus, the warmongers, they've got their plans, Malaka. They've got their plans. Wait, attends. They got their plans that when the time is right, they can pull it out. I want to end with Teresa's message that you read. Because this is from Gaza, Muhammad talked about that he won't give up. Yes. That he wants to become like a phoenix. That he is like the olive groves that cannot be unrooted. That he can't stop thinking about vengeance and revenge and hate for the other, the Israelis who are doing this to him and his family and his people. He can't control it. But what does he end with? This is in Gaza, under these bombs and this carnage. Muhammad says, I want to still remain the Muhammad that is a human, the Muhammad that is loving, the Muhammad that is a good friend. I take my hat off to Muhammad because he ends saying he wants to be a human being. Wallahi, listen. That's where we have to end and begin. And that's from the mouth of Muhammad in Gaza. Thank you, Teresa. And thank you to you all.
Thank you, Imad. Bueno, quería daros las gracias, dar las gracias a los...
I would like to thank the interpreters who are doing a great job as well. I would like to thank the interpreters who are doing a great job. Unfortunately, we only have 10 minutes to make some questions. We'll just take 3 or 4 questions. I will ask the speakers to be short in their answers, really short, because we really need to leave it here. Thanks.
Sí, 1, 2, 3.
La pregunta es, como se está buscando...
My question is that you're looking for an element for peace. We have a problem here, and it is the problem is that Israel and the United States of America do not respect the international tribunal's decision. So my question is, what does Teresa Aranguren think about the fact that geopolitics in North America towards the Middle East, that because, you know, for example, the United States of America and other countries decided to move their embassies to Jerusalem. So this created a process of eliminating the Palestinian will to have its proper state. So my question to you, up to which point do you think that this is a key point, and as long as we don't really solve this problem, there will never be a real possibility for peace. Because of the North American politics and their influence in the Middle East, if we don't change this, there is no solution possible. So we're going to take all the questions. You were talking about peace proposals, but you did not talk about the root of the problem, which is the Zionist lobby. If we don't cut this from the beginning, all this power, all this presence that the Zionist lobby has in the world centers, so because we have an image of Iran that is completely deformed, we have an image of Yemen, of Syria, etc., because all this is based on lies, and so we see how people are just lying, and they're lying, and we can't do absolutely anything, and there is no solution possible. So we have a problem, and the problem is with the root causes. Well, actually, I'm going to start to answer to this person. I'm Jewish, and I lead an association that is called the Catalan Association of Jews and Palestinians, and we fight together for the rights of Palestinians. We exist since 2008, which was right after the conflict, when Gaza was attacked, and we felt the need to meet together in order to say that this was not a war of religion, it was not an ethnic war, it was a country that, and I come from a family of many people who were deported to Auschwitz, and they almost disappeared, and the fact that Europe was 100% colonialist at that time, so we benefited from this with the help of France and Great Britain to go to the Middle East. That's why always, since they arrived, they had a colonialist policy. Ben Gurion, at the very beginning, he said, we are going to dominate them, we're going to take their land, and we're going to colonize them. And this was the policy of Israel from the very beginning. It did not come with Netanyahu. Of course, we realized this more or less. So the Zionist lobby that dominates the world. This is not true to start with. Of course, there is a lobby with huge economical powers, but there are many other lobbies in the world, and the world is not dominated by the Zionist lobby. It's dominated by Western imperialism, basically, and especially the American imperialism, because more Zionists in the United States are the evangelists, who are 50 million. A huge part of the Jewish community are fighting more and more against the Zionist policy in Israel. And we have to realize this, because if not, we will fall into an anti-Semitic posture that is not acceptable. No, because the Zionist lobby does not dominate the Jewish lobby does not dominate the world. It might be the Zionist one. It is not true. The Jewish lobby does not dominate the world. Of course, they have a power and they are using it. Of course, no doubt of it. But there are so many other lobbies, basically, and they don't dominate the world. And we need to really make this very clear. Besides this, what we see is for example, Biden, a few years ago, he was a little bit younger, but anyway, he said Israel is our best military platform in the Middle East in order to defend our interests. And this was Biden who said it. So if there were no Jewish people, we would have to invent them. So this is the problem. The problem are the Western interests in the Middle East. And in the midst of all this, we have the Palestinian drama, but we should not forget that we have a policy that always defends the West, and that's why we are really helping Israel with its colonialist policies. Why? Because they belong to us, and this is absolutely fundamental to understand this. It is true that I share with Teresa that nowadays neither Palestinians have the power to be able to negotiate and to find a solution, nor this exists within the Israeli society. There was a survey that found that 57% of the Israeli people did not want this two-state solution. So it is clear that the solution has to come from outside Israel. So that's why it is extremely important for all of us in our countries to put all the pressure on our governments to take measures. It is important, for example, and I'm talking about this here. There is a huge campaign against the weapons sales and imports from Israel also. And when Sanchez was talking about the Gaza people who were dying, this same day Spain signed a contract for 170 missiles that were sold from Spain to Israel. So we need to be honest. So first and foremost, we need to put pressure on the Spanish government in order to stop these types of contracts, basically. So we need to, of course, fight against the American and the Western imperialism, basically. This is what we have to do. And help the Palestinians, of course. So I propose that we finish with very final words, because we really have to finish this conference. So I will be very fast. Basically, United States of America, of course, it is United States of America are behind this. Israel and the United States of America are a tandem, and we know this, and everyone knows it. As for the lobby, I totally agree with you. There is not a Zionist lobby that controls the world. In the United States of America, there's a Zionist or pro-Israeli lobby that is not the most powerful, but it's very powerful, basically, in the communication media. That's why it has so much importance. It's very difficult for any candidate in the midst of a campaign to criticize Israel, because they really hold the communication, and Israel does not represent all the Jews in the world. And this is extremely important to understand and to say. To go back to the United States of America, there is something changing. Did you see the New York Jews who went down on the streets, and many were arrested? This was absolutely impossible to imagine in the United States of America. And it was the New York Times, if I remember well, that showed the photos and the names of all the victims of one of the Israeli bombings. It was in 2014, and many people accused the New York Times for being anti-Semitic. And there is something that is happening in the United States of America, and the President Biden is very much aware that his attitude of unconditional support to Israel is eliminating a lot of votes also, because there are many people of Arabic origins who live in the United States of America. The problem is that in the next elections we're going to have Donald Trump, and we are going to have so much fun. And okay, so Anani, do you have anything to say just to finish?
Yes, U.S. important, major backer of Israel, not only in kindness and support, but also in military support as the largest recipient of U.S. military aid, second going to Egypt. When it comes to the Zionist lobby, let's be very clear. When it comes to AIPAC is the main one in Washington, D.C., it actually ranks about 17th or 18th. But when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, specifically on Israel, it's number one. That's the specificity. But actually, the largest lobbies in Washington are the ones that benefit from war. Your military-industrial complex, your pharmaceutical companies, your communication industry, and the list goes on. The Israeli lobby, as pointed out by this wonderful lady with the great hair, is that it's actually backed by evangelist Christians who believe that Israel existing brings back who? The Messiah, Jesus. We come back to Jesus again, who was a rebel Jew. Finally, on the quickly on South Africa, because I'm a South African as well, and I saw apartheid fall. And when you think in '94 it fell, people say you're crazy. South Africa apartheid regime had nuclear weapons, had the fourth largest, most important, technologically advanced military, but there were three components that brought down apartheid. Number one, the black movement. Inkatha, freedom movement, ANC with Madiba and all of those amazing roots with global support from the communities. Not necessarily US government, but the people. Number two, it was the whites within South Africa, apartheid, they were like, oh my God, this looks really horrible, what's happening. And they shifted. So there was a lot of allies within the white communities in South Africa. Number three, it was the geopolitics and global power shift with the fall of the Soviet Union. So I'm saying this all to you because there are so many layers and factors that play that, again, if the timing is right, ANC was fighting for freedom of black South Africans for decades.
Hey, madam, sorry, we really have to
I'm just saying, the time has come, and it is now when they look like they're the strongest, where the Achilles heel is going to break. Yalla, join us.
So thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much to all of you, and thank you to all the speakers and all the technical team, and to the audience. Thank you.